good morning, welcome, good people of a great nation. It's a pleasure to be on this first edition of Development Focus with Gito on ITV today, 23rd of February 2022. I do hope you are enjoying our programming since we opened studio this morning. We brought you some pep talk at 7 and the news at 7:30. Now we are moving into the discussion segment of the Development Focus with Didi Ojo on ITV. I did tell you when we opened studio that we'll be talking about the rot in the education sector this morning. And I have here seated with me in the studio an educationist. He not only studied education, he also taught in several schools from secondary through to tertiary level. And that's why I've dragged him here to come and share his experience. What has been his views, his overview of Nigeria's education sector. There are allegations of very rife corruption in the education value chain. How true is this, or is it exaggerated? So I have here with me a development consultant and primarily an educationist, Alhaji Bash Olashukwu. You're welcome on the show.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to have you. Tell us a bit about yourself. I introduced you as an educationist. Primarily, I knew you first studied education before you delve into other development sector. But what do you want our viewers to know about who Bash Olashukwu is?
Yeah, the full name is Bashiru Akanji Olashukwu. I started my education from home. From home. Home, okay. Yes, home like everybody. From my parents, the neighbors, everybody around, family members, the extended family in those days when people attached importance to those things, and then moved to primary school, secondary school. But at the end of the day, I found myself at the College of Education in Ikere-Ekiti. Then where I studied English language and French.
English language and French. This is news. Yeah. So, parlez-vous. Comment parlez-vous?
No, let's not.
Bon appétit.
Only that towards the end, people started making jest of us. When they say qu'est-ce qu'il y a, you will say, oh, yeah, sure, oh, yeah, we. So, from College of Education, I left the College of Education in 1986. By 87, and let me state this: as at that time, there was that serious dearth of qualified teachers in Ondo State. The then Ondo State comprised of the present Ondo and Ekiti states. So they were together to the extent that as at the time we were graduating in 1986, the Ministry of Education sent their officers to come and interview us in the school to tell you how things were.
Because there were deaths of teachers
and they wanted us to, immediately you were graduating then, you will be absorbed. So they came, they interviewed us. I was given an appointment. I became a teacher at St. Patrick's Secondary School in Waroka in Ondo State. I was there until 1989 when I moved to Uniben, also to read English education. Wow! At the university there. And all along, my dream was to become a lecturer. But along the line, there were some issues between us as an activist and the university administration then. So when I went back for my master's, the university said, oh, we don't want this troublesome person in the school. So they had to withdraw my admission. I had to take the university to court. And eventually I won the case with Dr. Osagi Obayuwana, who was the person who handled the case.
Former Attorney General.
He was the one who handled my case on behalf of CDHR then. In Benin with Professor Festus, the late Professor Siai, all of them being involved, and at the end of the day I won. But before the ruling, I was already in Lagos with Committee for Defense of Human Rights. That was how I veered off. But later, when I moved to Abuja here, I have a friend who we met at the College of Education in Ikere-Ekiti, Professor Rasaki. professor of dance. I think maybe it's the only
Rasaki, Bakari Ojo.
Bakari Ojo Rasaki. We were together at College of Education Ikere. So
in the 80s.
In the 80s, and he later went to study theater as in Calabar. So we met in Abuja here, and through our discussions and so on, he now told me that, look, he had become the head of the Department of Theatre Arts, and then diploma in mass communication at the University of Abuja was under him, and that he drafted me into this thing. I taught there for some time. There were some unsavory things that eventually made me to say, look, I think I've had enough of this if I want to maintain my sanity. So I eventually left that line, and I've concentrated on peace building, which has been the area I've been working on since.
Okay, before we do peace in education, let's talk about some of those unsavory things. Recently, you are involved in an education summit, just some couple of weeks back. Yeah. And a lot of revelations were made at that summit. We have academics, and people, the operators and the regulators of the education system were there. And you were the moderator, you were the master of ceremony at that event. So that is primarily why I dragged you down, because education is the bedrock for any society. Whatever you want to become in life, if you are not educated, whether it's an aeronautic engineer, computer inventor, whatever, you must be educated. And that is how important education is to every human society. And that's why I'm explaining this. But what do your overview, general overview of the state of education in Nigeria, before we even talk about the corruption, what compared your time in the 70s, 80s, 90s to what obtains in the contemporary time?
Let me look at it from this perspective. If you ask different people what they see as the state of education, you are also going to get different views. My view is on the fact that there has been, I think initially the way I saw it was that there was a gradual decline in the standard, in the quality, in the attention being paid to education in Nigeria. But it got to a point that we have this perspective that when an evil action is committed and repeated over a long period of time, people tend to believe it's a tradition. So those things that were giving people concern about the state of education, how things were going, seems over time to have been seen as matters of course. That,
the new normal.
Yeah, they more or less appeared normal now. Some things that today we just close our eyes to, they started at the time that we ought to have nipped them in the bud, but we thought those things were insignificant, and gradually, and I will give you some examples. For instance, I am aware that given the law governing the admission of people into universities in Nigeria, any child who has not attained the age of 16 years is not supposed to
be offered admission.
I'm not sure that we are adhering to that today.
Particularly the private schools.
Private schools. They are not adhering, and yet there are people supposed to be monitoring, having some oversight in terms of ensuring that these private schools, even though they are private, there are certain standards that they are supposed to comply with. That is just a typical example. But people will tell you that what's the big deal about it? After all, if in our time people were entering secondary school at the age of 12, if there are children who can enter at the age of 8 or 8.5 now, years now, there is nothing wrong with it. This thing started, and gradually a lot of other things started coming, and then we have dismissive attitudes to them that these things will correct themselves and so on. And that's why we have gotten to where we are today. That is it. Okay,
let's start from we talk about literacy, numeracy, and this or that. I think there's a tripartite I hear people in education talk about. Let's look at even how early we take our children to school. Perhaps because many parents are now career, workers. 2 years, you have already enrolled your child in Montessori. Then, before you talk of KG1, KG2, hardly will you find a child who goes to private schools now saying that is in primary 6. From primary 4, they are already
in the secondary school.
In the secondary school. Is that the... Because I just can't wrap my head around it. In my time, you are asked to put your head, your hand across your head. If it doesn't touch your head, your hair, you are not admissible. But today, at 2 years, Eze is going to school. Is that okay? Is that right? Is that the fashionable and modern trend that we should copy?
That is, you have used the right word. People see it as something fashionable. It's like a status symbol now to say that my child at 8 years. I was talking to somebody recently who told me that the daughter at I think she's just 17 is already in 300 level in one university. And I said, look, don't you think, but let's come to the basics. I think the basic thing, the way I see it, is that we started overloading these children from.
I mean, how can you enroll a 2-year-old child in school?
Even those that we even allow to even say they become of age before they get to this school. You see children now coming back from school. At what time? Some of them 4, 5 p.m. And as they are
doing evening classes.
They do evening classes. There is assignment for them to do at home. And then early in the morning, they are off again. During holidays, you hardly see them.
They do
holiday coaching and all that. I think we are getting these children overloaded. But like I said, there are those who will tell you that no, if these children are exceptionally bright, that this thing. But all I know is this: there is no shortcut to anything in life. If you take a shortcut, at some point in your life, you are still going that distance, the distance you are able to wave aside in your shortcut, you are still going to track them and cover that distance.
So, enrollment at a very tender age, and then we now have exposure to ICT quite early. A child in KG class, I don't know what that kg means. Is it kilogram or whatever?
No, I think that's kindergarten.
Kindergarten. In kindergarten, it's already having a phone. Can surf the net, can browse, and we think they are smart kids. Is that the way to expose them so early to this ICT?
It also goes down to the controversy that this kind of discussion generates. A lot of people subscribe to the idea that let them have it. The only thing is try to introduce some kind of in-house censorship
PG
to make sure that some of there are limitations.
They cannot access some sites and all of that.
And whatever. But the thing is this: the extent to which your censorship can work in terms of what they get into becomes something that one cannot really predict. Yeah, it's a good thing as far as people out there, everybody is concerned that these children, they are very smart and whatever. It goes beyond that. I've seen friends I will go and visit, and I, as a Yoruba person, I say, Bawo ni Opele, and the parents will be proud to tell me that, sorry.
He doesn't speak Yoruba.
He doesn't speak Yoruba. As if he's even at
Yoruba language is a taboo. So you know.
Even the parents who is proud to tell you that the child doesn't speak Yoruba, I will tell you I did not went there. That's the parent who is saying. So I just find some of these things a celebration of absurdities. That's the way I see it.
Lucidity of absurdity. Okay. Now let's look at it this way. The foundation is what we are talking about now. You enroll your child in school so early in life, at age 2, age 3, by age 8, they're out of school. Let's look at the infrastructure and facilities available in public and private schools. Let's start with the public. In my days, in your days, we do not have to carry bench and table and chair to school. They are provided for. The classrooms are secure. When it's raining, the shutters are shut. You close the window. You close the. But today, it's open heaven. where we are breeding future leaders. The state of infrastructure in many public primary and secondary schools have absolutely collapsed. Is this right for breeding the future leaders of this country?
I think the basic thing I always tell people is this. There are two major issues you must always try to address once you identify that there is a challenge to solve your problem. First of all, let there be dialogue. Let people come and let them accept that this is a problem confronting us. Even though most of our problems are self-made problems we created by ourselves. And then the second thing is, let's not pretend where we have policies that are not working. Let's not pretend that these policies are working. And that is the bane of the public schools. We are talking of free and compulsory education up to the junior secondary school, years 3. And the questions we used to ask as people in the education parlance is the concept of equal opportunity and equality of opportunity in education. What does that mean? Equal opportunity is that every child should have the right, the opportunity to go to school without any artificial hindrance, any artificial inhibition that will prevent the child from going to school. So that the opportunity is there for every child, whether you are the son of the president or the daughter of a farmer or whatever. That opportunity, and that is why we say free education, so that you won't say you are not able to go to school because your parents cannot afford this and that. That is it. Then the concept of equality of opportunity now looks at, if everybody has that opportunity and they utilize it, is it also a reality that what a child attending a primary school or a government secondary school in Abuja here gets from the curriculum is what the child who is attending the same primary and secondary school gets in Kajola in Osun State, or in Monoton in Ibadan, or in Arigidi Akoko in Ondo State? You know, these are examples in the other. So is it the same, the unified curriculum that produces the same quality for everybody? And I think that is where, first thing is where the problem lies. These things are not working that way, and we have refused to acknowledge they are not working. You say free compulsory education. The child has to go to school, and the parents have to buy the locker, the tables and the chairs these children are using. Is that free education? So it's not compulsory for the government to continue to pretend that we are providing free education. If it's not working, let's know it's not working, and let's go into partnership with parents and whatever, and let us know the basis that these children or the parents are supposed to provide.
Exactly. I think you have a very good point there. People quote chapter 2 of the Constitution, which talks about free and compulsory education, particularly basic education. And we know that there is no free lunch in Freetown. We do not want to pay for those services. I have here 24 agencies are under the Ministry of Education. 24. It's the ministry with the highest number of agencies or parastatals. What are these 24 doing? You talk about curriculum. There is a National Education Research Development Center and several others. Is it really about curriculum development or application of the training? You hinted at something that in your time, while you are in College of Education, there was paucity, death of teachers. Today, in 2022, the same problem is still existing.
That is the point. In fact, at the time I graduated, I know then that in Oyo State, PTA, Parent Teacher Association, was already employing teachers.
I was to take up that appointment. I was also a PTA teacher in Oyo State.
The PTA was paying those teachers then. Till today, those problems are still there. we've not been able to solve them. And when you are okay, it's even more horrible than we are saying. I know of a state today that as at this morning now, any child going to school there, their secondary school, the parent must give the child 100 naira.
For what?
That's what they pay their teachers to teach them for today.
So this daily paid?
It's daily paid in the public school. The governor is not paying salaries. And yet, people don't want their children to stay at home. So those who can afford the private schools, they send them. The public schools, since teachers are not paid, and they come there, they sit down and everybody will be looking at each other. But since they devise this thing that, okay, the children, this class, today there are 30 of them, 25 of them are able to raise 25,000. So if they are able to teach them 5 subjects, those teachers will share the money. That's just conjectural. The money may not be up to that. Maybe a teacher goes on with 2,000 or 3,000 a day because they are not being paid. It's as bad as that. And there are people in those states looking at what the governor is doing, yet people are not really talking.
Okay, let's look at issue around admission racketeering. Today, we have on our hands people who procured the admission. And this is not even limited to tertiary institutions. That maybe I'm going to College of Education or Polytechnic or University. To go to some unity schools, to go to some government-owned secondary schools, you have to bribe your way through. Despite doing well in the entrance examination. How bad is this situation?
It's really very bad. I will not want to speak much about the ones in the unis. Let's look at the ones in the tertiary institution. About 12 years ago, I was in Lagos and I went on official assignment to Obafemi Awolowo University. And there was, I think he's late now, then Dr. Ayeni Akeke in Department of Political Science. And I said, Uncle, long time, how is work? You say, Bash, I don't really know how it is. Though. We are in this thing and we just continue to be there. That as the head of department, he was going through the results they submitted to him, the last semester exam. And he discovered this is second semester. They have students that for all the courses, about 6 of these students took, both first and second semester, there was not a single one they scored up to 20%. And he was so shocked that he had to go and call and say, look, let's even look at the admission, how these students got into this university. They look at the WAEC results, very excellent. And then jump, they score high scores. So how did those children, how did they get into the university? And I said, Uncle, you know I was a teacher in the secondary school. Even where in the village where I was teaching, they had a culture then. Especially when it was time to write English language and mathematics. All their brothers in the higher institution, they will come by weekend. They say they want to come and help their brothers and sisters. My students were also looking forward to that. They came to meet me and said, sir, on Tuesday we are writing English, your course. They say it's your celebration. They call it Odun Yini, your festival. So we hope that, and I say sorry. And the way they were talking, I even knew their parents were involved in this. And I told them, I said, no, forget about this thing. I warned you people when I started teaching you English language that, look, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. The fact that you also have this thing mentality that somebody is coming to help you, that
will make you not to be serious.
Concentrate and serious. I was giving you people time. Before 8 in the morning, I will come between 6:30 and 7:30. I will teach you people. When we close, other teachers go home. I still spend an extra hour. And I was doing this thing free of charge for my students. But I said, I wanted to break the jinx. And good enough, by the time the result came, the set I thought is there. Go to that school, you find out.
Which school is that?
St. Patrick's Secondary School, Waro Akoko in Ondo State. For about 9 years, the best they had in English language was 16%. Students that passed. But the year I taught them, actually I took that set from Form 4 to Form 5. And I was able to groom them. And by the time the result came, for the first time they made 51%. Some of my students then, I know those who are medical doctors in UK now, those who are medical consultants, a lot of them everywhere in Nigeria today. And some of them will still see me and say, thank you, sir. you gave us that confidence that these things are just like every other subject. It's just the way you put it across. And that takes us to the issue of the quality of teachers we are also getting in the schools today.
Yeah, but
the inadequacy of teachers is there. There is also the issue of the quality of teachers we have.
Exactly.
So if the teachers are not good, it's going to be garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, you have that scenario that played out in Kwara State under Bukola Saraki as governor, where Malam Bolaji Abdullahi said question for primary 4 exam questions for teachers, and there was mass failure on the part of the teachers. In Kaduna State, Malam Rufai had to sack about 42,000 or thereabout because they were not just
in the state. Teachers were told that if you have lost your certificate, like many of you claim, go and swear to an affidavit and bring. When Comrade Oshiomhole was governor, but we saw the scenario that played out. A teacher came with an affidavit that she's purportedly swore to in the court, and they say, okay, read what is there. She could not read.
She could not read.
Recently in Borno State, they said about 2,300 and something, 386 teachers or so. This was last week. That about 2,286 teachers, they had no qualification at all.
And they are teaching.
And they are they have been teaching. And
so how did they get in there if not through corruption?
So when we talk of corruption, and that's one thing I want our viewers to know, corruption is not just about
exactly.
It's about the system in general. It's about
when you corrupt the system, when you do, it's like adulterated food that we are buying now.
That is
when you adulterate, when you cut cost, people don't know that sex for mark is corruption. Sex for grade is corruption. Sex for admission is corruption. So they look at it, did I ask you for money? Did you give me anything? But when you go through shortcut, somebody you help to write exam, that's impersonation. That is crime on its own. Even if you didn't collect money from the person, under the guys that I'm helping my brother,
but it has become a norm in most of our communities.
It is not corruption.
It is a norm now. When it's time to write these exams, people go and write these exams for them.
That's the mercenary
option. People do it. They have special centers they go to enroll.
The miracle centers.
Yes, those are students that on their own, they can even do this thing and pass. Maybe instead of making 70%, you end up with 60 or even 55%, which for me is gratifying if it is the product of your hand. People don't see it. We've gotten to a state that we discard anything that has to do with morality, and the issue is just any way we get there, let's get there.
Look at look at the issue of exam malpractice. How pervasive is it?
Exam malpractice?
Yes. Now they are writing it. It's not mercenary now. This one, you know when they say they carry masquerade. So let's talk about it because it's part of the corruption we're talking about.
Now let's look at it from this way. First of all, let's look at those internal exams that are conducted. You find, when I was a teacher, we discovered cases where the typist who was supposed to type
the exam
questions for our students leaked the questions to some students, and at the end of the day, what did we discover? English language was something that people were afraid of. We now had 2 students who scored very high marks in English language, and I checked, were high relatively. And when I checked, when I saw it, I said, I know these students, I know their capacity as a teacher. How come these people score these marks? I now discovered that it's the objective questions that they cleared almost everything. But we had a teacher, a born-again teacher there, Mr. Kulogun, who said, these economics I'm teaching, these are students that I know their language power in sport, that they don't even understand the question. They fail economics. How come they are getting credit in your English language? I said, look, let's sit down together. And then we invited them and discovered it was this typist that leaked it. That is one aspect of it. That is the internal one. And there are different levels of it.
For paltry sum of money.
Even if there was no money. Okay, this one is my friend's sister.
My friend's son.
And so now let's move ahead and go to the external ones. The external ones, people compromise at different levels. There are those that will make sure that they find a way of leaking the questions. When during the Abacha era and the crisis surrounding the MKO Abiola's elections annulment,
1993.
So I was already a postgraduate student in Uniben because I went there for my first master's degree. Immediately I finished my youth service. So they shut down the schools. I was at home. And then I was in the house when some of my friends in our area, Eleko Roibadan there, came to me and said, we got this question, Orijo. These students are going to write, I think, JAMB or something then. And they said they've got the questions. And when they brought the questions, it looked so original that they know since I read English, I should be able to put them through. That this, I said, where did you get this? They say, I should not worry that they have a lot of their brothers who are writing. I started looking at it. By the time I got to question number 6, I saw one grammatical error there. By the time I moved to question 10, I saw another one. I returned it to them. I said, whoever gave you this one collected your money for nothing. They said, what is that? I said, this cannot come from JAMB. JAMB cannot say questions where you have this type of horrible mistakes. Didn't you people look at it? And they left me, went to other people who gave them the thing. But by the time they got to the exam, what happened? It was the wrong thing. So you have those who, the racketing they do is to prepare what they tell people is the original question, sell it, and at the end of the day, it's like what you buy. You go to the pharmacy, you buy a drug that you have a certain ailment. They will put it there. If after 3 days your symptoms persist, they will not ask you to come and collect your money. They say then you should
go and see your doctor.
So it's very simple. If I have collected money from you and I've given you fake questions, by the time you get to the hall and it's not the same thing, you cannot come back
next year.
That is at that level. You also see the ones that they do in the exam hall, that people just say no, it's not what it is. And I think I should commend JAMB. They've really tried a lot in recent time
with CCTV camera at the CBT center
to bring these things
under
control, at least to a manageable level now. But I think inwardly too, in our universities, I think we should look at what are the issues around this thing. The education summit you mentioned was organized by Human Development Initiative and with the support of MacArthur Foundation. You were there briefly that day, and there were discussions about most of these things, and we are talking about the issue of infrastructure, how you get to schools. Luckily, the chairman of the House of Representatives Committee on Basic Education, Professor Honorable Julius Ihonvere, he was here, and he mentioned one statement that day after I mentioned that when I went to Maiduguri, what I saw in terms of the infrastructure being provided, that I had to record some of these things and send to some of the platforms that look, we can be decision assessing that there is a war going on somewhere, but the governor who is determined to help the people to work will work. 6 schools here, secondary schools with air conditioned rooms.
I saw it when I went to Maiduguri.
And that's a place that has been under this Boko insurgency attack for how many years? Yeah, they are still managing because they have a focus now that they have to go back to the basics and rebuild. And then Professor Ihonvere now said, even when he got to Gombe State on their monitoring visitors oversight team of the National Assembly, that what he saw in Gombe State was enough for him to be convinced that Nigeria can work if Nigerians want Nigeria to work. That he has never met the governor before. So it's not about PR thing for the governor. But what he saw in Gombe State, what they are doing about basic education, he said is something he would recommend that other states we do. But some of these gatherings we go to, you also discover that the chairman of SUBEB and all them in those states, they are political appointees of the governor. So most of the time, everybody comes there to sing, oh, we thank His Excellency, he's doing this, he's doing that. But in reality, we have states now that children still sit on the floor.
On stones. And learning on that tree.
And you see it even as a teacher. It's not something you look forward to. When you wake up in the morning and you look at the environment where you are going to teach, you feel like
no conveniences. Not when there is rain, it's flooded. The classrooms are flooded.
Okay, what prompted me to say, look, I'm going back to the university. As at that time when I was a teacher, the aim thing, because people were not certain of getting jobs after leaving school, most of our teachers were going for this sandwich program. But I look at it, I've been able to take the set from 4 and 5 and handle those 2 years. They've graduated. I now have the younger ones coming in from JS, getting into FS1. And I discovered that in age, in everything, outlook about life, there was a very big gulf between them and the ones that just graduated. You even crack jokes in the class. These children didn't even understand what you are talking about. And then I asked myself, is this where I really want to stay? When I said I was leaving, one of our teachers came and said, it's because you are not married that you don't have responsibility, you want to resign. That me, as you see me, I put my television, white and black, and put my legs on the table and watch in the evening. If you go, you won't get a job. I said, look, I've had enough of this. If I want to retain my sanity, let's go to the private school. I had an experience where somebody told me that a professor who retired from the University of Benin, I'm not going to mention his name, his wife was also a librarian, the chief librarian of the university. She also retired. The professor got appointment as a lecturer in a private university in, I think, Delta State. And he became the dean of the School of Postgraduate Studies there. That he came home one evening and told the people in the house that if I don't want to run mad, I think I should forget about the money or whatever I'm getting here. I should just come home and enjoy my retirement. And I say, "Ah, Daddy, what is it?" He said, "Okay." That the students wrote exams. That there was a particular boy who graduated from that school and made the first class and got admitted to do his postgraduate in Liverpool University in UK. But after the first semester or so, they asked him to withdraw, that he could not cope at all. The boy now came back to where he graduated from in Nigeria, the private school, and then they gave him the admission. And now this boy wrote exams. 2 of the courses were actually taught by this professor. And this boy scored very woeful marks. But in those, you know, federal universities and so on, they don't have receipt exams now. You carry over the courses. But in private universities, you give opportunity for receipt. So they now say, okay, they should do the receipt exam. So he marked it, and the boy also failed. Already the boy had said he will fail. He had gone to meet a lecturer who went through the deputy registrar and called this man to say, Daddy, Prof, the way we run the system here is different from what you do in the federal district.
In the Unibeno.
In Unibeno. That you see, these private universities, our own universities, they are private ones. When a child fails and then there is going to be a receipt, the child will be asked at the point of registering and payment for that course. What score do you want for this course? So if he wants that A for the receipt, he's going to pay. They charge them money officially to determine what they are going to get as cost when they write this thing. That
when they write receipt.
I said the prof said that day when they left his office, that for about 30 minutes he was just asking himself, is this really Nigeria? What is really happening?
I say you pay that this is the score I want and this receipt. As you pay into the school that
no matter what you write, the lecturer is informed that these are the people who have paid for A's. They must get A's. These are type of the terrible things, and these are unfortunately some of these children are also the ones, because to afford these universities, so to say, 60% of those who send their children are people high up there who have the financial wherewithal to dictate how things happen. So when they get out, there is also a high tendency that they are also going to be the ones they be pushed to get some of the best jobs, or at least the job racketeering that is going on. We can continue to pretend, but we all know that in some of our agencies, you pay 1.5 million. You pay up to 5 million in some agencies. So those parents who can get jobs. So a child who paid for his A's in this postgraduate, well, the parents can also afford the 5 million, and then one day he will emerge as maybe the chairman of a company, and you know, these are the type of things. So at that education summit, we were able to identify certain critical challenges to basic education in Nigeria. I think there were 5 of them. The first one was that from the analysis, from the submission discussions and everything, it became obvious that the curriculum we are running is already a mismatch for the reality of the in terms of technological development and all that. There will be the need. Some people were saying they should throw it away, but some of us were saying no, you don't throw it away. Let them review it. What is not in tandem with the reality of the day, let them. So there is the need for curriculum review there. There is also the issue of infrastructure, which we have been talking about here. The next one is the issue of the teachers. In terms of quantity and quality, most of these schools don't have enough teachers. Go to NYSC now. When they want to post out coppers, you see communities sending delegations to NYSC when I was to serve in River State in 1992. I was there at the NYSC Secretariat. About 3 different communities came and they were begging me. One was saying, look, in fact, the way one community, the representative begged, I was ready to go with them. Until they now told me that the place is not far, it's just about 2 hours on the river. Before we get there, I said, that's not something I'm prepared for. But they said for 8 years, they've not had a single English teacher in that community to teach their children. They were coming with all kind of incentives. We will give you a flat, we will give you a generator, we don't have light, the community will be giving you food and so on. Things are as bad as that.
Which year was this?
This was 1992.
In
River State. People, all the riverine area, if teachers are posted there, they don't go. So we don't have enough teachers, and then the issue of the quality of teachers we send to these schools. There are certain basic things that the teaching profession is not for dollars.
Of course not. People you can't give what you don't have.
What you don't have. There are certain basic attributes a teacher must have. A teacher must have a good arresting voice, a baritone voice, that when you are teaching, it must be attention arresting, and people can listen to you and you can carry them along. Not that you get to the classroom and you say, Mr. Giwa is a trader. Before you know it, with your sonorous voice, before you even, all your students will be sleeping off. When I was in the university, we had a lecturer that every day, if we were 50 in the class when the lecture started, by the time we sent in the 1 hour lecture, maybe only 6 of us will be left. It was always so boring and so dull. And he was teaching us adverb one day. Quietly, people were going out and he said, use an example of the use of adverb is quietly. And he said, quietly, the students are walking out of the lecturer. In Uniben, then in my department, my classmates, if they work this life, many of them are easily. So you have to look at the quality of teachers you are sending to the school. And then basically, there is the issue of enrollment and retention, which that day we were able to tell them, let the communities be involved. In public schools these days, a lot of schools are without children. And it's not as if these children are not available. In the past, when we were growing up, during the holidays, delegation from schools will go to meet different families. Do you have children who are of age who will come to school? So if they have registered with this primary school, if another one calls, they say, no, we've registered them. It's like a competition trying to get there. But today people think it's demeaning having to do that. And that is why the private schools are doing it. Take your car, drive around Lugo anywhere. Now, if you don't wind up the glasses of your car, you see people dropping leaflets, telling you handbills, please, come to us.
No, let's look at these private schools.
Yes.
What I see is high turnover of teachers and lecturers there, because many of them are being whole salary, or the salary is very paltry.
You mean in the public schools?
Even in private schools. In public schools, you can have a teacher that will be there for 35 years, unless it's on transfer. But in private schools, you hear the abysmal amount teachers are being paid.
No, I think the thing is that the owners of those schools have an unspoken policy of determining for you how far they want you to rise in life. Most of them, even the quality of teachers they employ, you'll be shocked.
Many of them are not even
in this Abuja here, there are schools that it is part of the responsibility of the teacher to clean the classroom before the students, the pupils, come to school. I know of schools like that.
They can't hire a cleaner?
No, they won't. It's the teacher who will clean the classroom.
And then you pay a graduate teacher 30,000, 40,000 naira per month.
Those are very benevolent and magnanimous ones. Some pay 20, 15, 25.
To graduate teachers.
And the moment you are late to school one day, there is a penalty for coming late for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. A certain amount of money
will be deducted from
that salary. So if for any reason you say you are sick, you are not coming for 3-4 days, they will allow you to go for your treatment. But for those days, no pay. So
how do we reset? Because we need to round up now. How do we reset the Nigerian education sector and let her blow to this issue of corruption that has permeated the entire landscape of our education sector?
I think, first of all, like I always say, maybe my experience in my field, peace building, and I will bring it here. First of all, let's sit down around the table. Let's collectively agree, because first of all, people must agree there is this problem. A lot of people are still deluding themselves that, their children are just on the fast lane, and that is why things are the way they are. that their children are very smart and all that. Let's all collectively agree that there are fundamental.
But we've been having education summit all this year.
Yes, it's just like most of the research they also do in Nigeria. After the research, the books are published and they are dumped in the library. Nobody makes use of them. So the issue now is for the Ministry of Education, the government, our communities and so on. We must come together and say we must enforce some of the recommendations that might come out of there.
Discipline, welfare, issues around
everything, infrastructure. There are governors, I know it's this administration now, that has made it mandatory that the counterpart fund the states are supposed to pay to access the money for them in UPay fund. Most governors don't pay it.
They didn't.
I know of a state that is the present governor that paid the backlog of over 80 years that was there.
No, when I wrote on this a couple of weeks ago, and I checked the UBEC website, as of 2019, there was 52 billion that is unclaimed by some states.
Yes, because the states, the governors, before the allocation comes, they already said their minds on what they want to use it for. So to even remove the money from that to just go and pay and access this was a problem. But I think this administration now has made it mandatory that money will be deducted from the source. But the other problem with it is that even when you deduct it and then you hand over the money, who monitors the use of the money when it gets to them? So I think it's a problem that we just have to really accept is there. Start looking at how we can even domesticate the understanding of the problems and make sure that people at the local level.
I don't want us to end this discussion without talking about ASU strike. As we speak, ASU is on strike, and I feel can we continue to have free education, quote and unquote, at tertiary level? Best place should be 800 naira, or I don't know how much you are paying in your own time for best place in Uniben. In Unilag, it used to be very one ridiculous amount. Then you don't pay tuition and all of that, and people still want that to continue in 2022. Is it the way out? And your thought on ASU strike generally?
Very quickly, when I was in the College of Education, they increased our accommodation fee from 90 naira to 120 naira. I didn't say 90,000 in 1986. From 90 naira to 120 naira. Myself and my friend, who is now the deputy registrar of Ekiti State University, Tunde, we were chronic deviants then. We said, no, this is extortion. How can we pay 120? We went because of that to rent accommodation in town. We know what we suffered for what we did. Now, today, parents or people are insisting that accommodation should still be at that amount. When I was in Uniben, it was a place that the light never went off. Because as the light was going off, they had 7 big generators then. It's automatically the generators will come on. And in your room, even rooms next to you, there are times you have to go and beg people in other rooms that please reduce the volume of your music. There are people who are addicted to their music 24 hours of the day. You use iron, you use cooker, you use all those things, and you are paying just 90,000 naira or whatsoever.
I don't know what to pay.
So as at today, is that realistic? And let's look at what is happening in the advanced countries. I have friends in Canada. They tell me, yes, they enjoy free education up to this thing, but once they get to higher schools, you pay a lot of money to get those things. If that is the way to go, the thing is that it's not something you just wake up in the morning and slam on slam it on the people that this is it. Let's sit down together, let parents be aware, and then let's look at how this can be done without creating. Okay, I have a daughter who attended Federal University, Akure, FUTA, University of Technology, Akure. For the 5 years she used there, the accommodation I got for her, which because she was very small then, I was afraid of her crossing the road. I got a room for her close to the gate of the school. Every year I paid 100,000 naira for accommodation for those 5 years.
Anyway.
And then for ASU, I think while we will plead with ASU, I think we also need to plead with the government, because Yoruba people will say, as you plead with the herbalist who is helping you to prepare the concoction, the anecdotes for the madness of somebody, you should also beg the mad person to be ready to take what is being prepared. I think all parties will have to sit down and know that what is happening, as it is not good for ASU, it's not good for the government, it's not good for the general image of our country. And that is something
that would be it. I want to thank you specifically, Bash Olajukbo, for coming on the show. I know it's an ongoing discussion, the challenge in the education sector, but this will be the size of our first discussion segment. We'll be back in a bit to take us through the second and final discussion segment. Please do stay tuned. Thank you very much once again.